Dr. Murphy, President Ramo, Sister Ann, and all the trustees and all the faculty. I'm so grateful. But just like you, because now I'm part of the class of 2016 too, who are we really grateful for? It's really our parents, my spouse, Luba, my children, our family, our friends who stuck with us through thick and thin. And President Ramo, you're right. They deserve the real hand of applause in gratitude from us. They stuck with us through thick and thin, as Joseph said. Graduates of the class of 2016, this is your day. As the psalmist wrote more than 3,000 years ago, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. And as God delights in the glory of his creation, he delights in each one of you right now and in your accomplishments. You have done it. Hooray. Now, as you heard in the intro, I did go to Liberia for 2 months in 2014. I did return, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. But before we start, I think we have to pause. Is Coach Jess here? We are standing on her softball field, and you all won the Skyline Conference and went to the NCAA. So we need to get her permission to stay here on this field. So I'll assume that she'll say yes. So in July of 2014, the TV was full of images from the Ebola epidemic that was unfolding in West Africa. The Ebola treatment units were full. They were overwhelmed. Patients were literally being taken to the isolation units, and there was no room, and they were dying there, often on the streets. The epidemic exploded in June, July, and August, and the medical infrastructure in those 3 countries, already before the epidemic started, was horrendous. It was commonplace for single-use gloves to be used time and time and time again till they literally disintegrated because there just weren't enough of them. The West is us, the United States and Europe, had pretty much ignored the epidemic early on. The WHO was very complacent. They thought, like other Ebola epidemics, it would just go away. But when it entered into Monrovia, which is a huge, terribly poor, sprawling urban area, it exploded. I'm an infectious disease doctor. I had never cared for a patient with Ebola, and neither had any of my infectious disease colleagues. But I had lived and taken care of my patients through the early years of the HIV epidemic. I understood not only the principles of taking care of patients and understanding infection control and remaining safe, but I understood the importance of practicing those principles, taking care of individuals side by side with others in order to learn and be able to provide that care, but also to acknowledge the fear. You cannot just poo-poo it. It's real. You should share your own fear and anxiety. You need to be a friend in the midst of that anguish. So I thought maybe I might be able to help. I emailed around in July, and most of the big organizations, they themselves hadn't figured out how to respond. And most of them didn't answer for quite some time. But I did email Sister Barbara Brilliant. She is a nurse. She is a midwife. She is an MPH. But most importantly, she's a Franciscan missionary of Mary who has lived in Liberia for the last 34 years and was there through the entire 14 years of the Civil War. She looked at my CV, she checked with the bishop in Monrovia, and she said, yeah, come on over. We'd love the help. She said, "We have 8 Catholic clinics that we work with. 3 of them have closed, either because of staff that have become infected with Ebola or because they totally ran out of supplies and didn't know what to do. We have 5 of our clinics that are still open." But I thought, well, these are just clinics. But when I looked into it, it turns out that they were delivering babies morning and night, 24/7. They were doing minor surgeries. You could receive IV antibiotics. You could spend 3 or 4 nights there if you were quite ill. These were mini hospitals. She also worked closely with St. Joseph's Catholic Hospital. In July, they had admitted a woman from Sierra Leone who was desperately ill, who had been turned away from the other hospitals. Brother Michael, who was also a nurse, took care of her, and he became infected with Ebola. Subsequently, 15 members of the staff became infected, of which 9 died, and the hospital shut. So Sister Barbara defined our mission plan. Keep the clinics that are open, open. Try and help the staff to be safe. Try and open the other clinics and work with St. Joseph's so they can open their doors. So next, I had to go to my wife, Luba. I explained it all to her. She had been keeping track, and she said, "Well, I guess they can use your help, so go ahead and go, but do me a favor. Don't do anything stupid, okay?" And she clearly was the real hero. She said, "I'll hold the fort down." 2 of our 5 kids were still at home, filled with all the crazy things that go on with teenagers. She said, "Don't worry about us. Just don't be stupid," because she knew me well. So I went with my son, Pat, and we scoured all the Home Depot stores around and got as much of the personal protective equipment that we could round up and filled 9 hockey bags full of supplies. We were able to catch the last flight in from Accra in Ghana to Monrovia in Liberia with Delta on August 31st. On September 1st, Delta had announced they were canceling their flights. That was it, but we made it in. We arrived, and we started to work immediately with the nursing staff at the nursing school and all the staff at Catholic Hospital. We trained and distributed the materials we had. We sat side by side with the staff caring for patients to understand their challenges, to implement triage, so when a patient came in who looked like they could have Ebola, they could be kept isolated right from the beginning, and to implement really a culture of infection control. You know who ran all those clinics? Entirely run by nursing staff. And as I think many of you know, the heart, the soul, and the key to good health care is nursing. No question. I was in awe of the practical day-to-day courage of the nurses who kept going to work each day. I remember talking to one of the nurses who said, "My family says, just call in sick today. Just call in sick, because maybe you could get infected today." And she said, "No, if I don't go in, there will be nobody to take care of our patients." One of the charge nurses started to care for an Ebola suspect patient, and she cared for that patient for the next 24 hours until that patient could go to the Ebola treatment unit, because she didn't want any of the other staff to have to potentially be exposed. And fortunately, she did not become infected. We worked closely to train community healthcare workers so they could go house to house, particularly in communities where Ebola had broken out, so that appropriate isolation could take place with anybody who could have come in contact to break the chain of transmission. And our best teachers were the nurses, the other community members, and even the doctors who had survived Ebola and who told what it was like, how they became infected, how they'd been in the treatment units, and how they had recovered. It was most rewarding. Our clinics did stay open without any more infection of staff members. One of the closed clinics was able to open its doors, and St. Joseph's Catholic Hospital in the first week of November opened and began to both deliver babies and do C-sections, which was desperately needed. What are some of the lessons I learned that it can apply to all of us, and all of us in 2016? First is, when there's a need, when there's a crisis, and you're thinking, should I go? Should I not go? There's always uncertainty in the heart. Will I be well enough prepared? No, you'll never be well enough prepared. What about when someone is terribly ill and I'm thinking, should I go visit? Will I know the right thing to say? No, you'll never know the right thing to say because you can never fix the pain. Will I be comfortable when I'm there? No, none of that matters. Just go. Go. Solidarity is a highfalutin word, but what it really means is go and be present, even though you are uncomfortable, even though you don't know exactly what to say, even though you're not perfectly prepared. Go with a smile and with your warmth and just be present. That makes all the difference. The other is, we are Americans. And as Americans, we always go with a plan. And you know what? That is a great thing. It is truly a great thing. But at the end of the day, it's not about our plan, it's not about our agenda, and it's not about what we want to do. When I went to Liberia, I wanted to work in the Ebola treatment units. But that's not where I was needed. I was needed in the general healthcare sector to try and help them. So jettison your agenda when you get on the plane. Show up with patience, with an open heart, and ask how you can help and do whatever is needed. Something my Liberian colleagues appreciated the most was that we could share a laugh in the middle of the craziest moments. One evening, we were all pretty discouraged and down, and we pulled out an old DVD of The Sound of Music. And we sang along with those great songs, and what a difference it made. So remember, a smile is the prettiest thing you can wear, and the most delightful sound in the world is a laugh. You will be terribly discouraged in future endeavors and adventures when you leave the Mount. One evening, I was so frustrated in Liberia, I called up Luba, my wife, and I just went on and on about how there was such dysfunction at the ministry level. There were warehouses full of supplies, and they couldn't get them distributed. It was real chaos. After Luba listened patiently, after a bit she said, you know, Tim, I think you better just buck up. You know, you can't fix everything. Just go back to taking care of the clinics that you're there to help. So I hung up the phone and I broke out laughing, because I realized that's the same talk that she'd been giving our teenage kids for so many years, and she was giving it to me. Now, I understand that you all this last year have also been dealing with some chaos at the leadership level here at the Mount. But we all have a choice. We can all spend our time and emotional energy worrying about the chaos, or we can get on with going to the next class, learning what we need to learn, and getting your diploma right here. And that's the key. Finally, I learned a thing or two about resiliency and about prayer. At 2 in the morning, when you're worried and having trouble sleeping, and I promise it will happen to you, my prescription is prayer. Mary is always there and awake. If you need to cry, she'll cry with you. If you laugh at your own silliness, she will laugh with you. And if you say the rosary, you'll go right back to sleep. I personally like the approach of your classmate, Cara Mufucci, who brought in a statue of Mary to all her nursing exams. And from what I understand, the bigger the test, the bigger the statue. Now, I have to wrap this up. One of your classmates, Sharon McGinnis, is going to go see her twin graduate at Marist, which is really beautiful. And I think I'll get shooed off this podium because you all have to get your degrees. Congratulations, class of 2016.